we all like hot stove stuff. Now, these are no room. I want to, make the difference here or signify the difference here. These are not rumors. These are not things that, as far as we know, that anybody's involved with teams are talking about or agents are talking about. Sorry. It's just like, well, here's what I think Team A should do, or here I think this is a good fit. So our friends at ESPN got busy on that, and I really like their panel of baseball writers. So they always have interesting thoughts. Now, in a separate story, rather than here are the best free agent fits, a separate story, senior writer David Schoenfield said this is one thing each team needs to do. And I like these kind of stories. I like these kind of columns. So he said for the Cardinals, trade infielder Nolan Gorman and a prospect to Oakland for their catcher Sean Murphy. And David Schoenfield goes on to explain what John Mozeliak has said about the catching position and what they're looking for to replace Yadier Molina, and that they want to go on the outside. It's not going to be a Kisner-Herrera thing. And, he was talking about the value of defense because it's defined us for so long. And Schoenfield speculates, and I think many people agree with him, although I'm not 100% convinced, that this would, the way Mozeliak laid it out, this would rule out the signing of free agent Wilson Contreras. So then, well, what do? He says Murphy's the perfect addition for the Cardinals because the A's are willing to move him for the right price. They have a rookie prospect, their top prospect, ready to take over. And Murphy, who was a strong two-way catcher, has got 3 seasons left of contract control, so he would be attractive to the Cardinals. There's no doubt about it. David Schoenfield also goes on to say, with Nolan Arenado returning to the Cardinals and the new shift rules coming in, the range-limited Gorman doesn't slot in at second base, especially for a team that loves to emphasize defense. And with the A's, Gorman can return to his more natural position of third base. The Cardinals would still have Tommy Edman or Brendan Donovan to fill in the middle infield, with prospect Mason Wynn a good bet to take over at shortstop in 2024. So that's a plausible scenario. He's not predicting it will happen. I'm not predicting it will happen. But is it plausible? Sure. Is it feasible? Sure. Would the price be more than Gorman and a prospect? Possibly, but I don't know. I don't know what the A's are looking for. So I can't answer those kind of questions. I'm reluctant to give up Gorman, but I very much so, because left-handed power bats are very hard to find, and I think he's going to be like a 30-home run guy in the near future. But unless they're prepared to commit to him as DH against right-handed pitching, which actually I think they should do, and there would be nothing wrong with that, of course. No, I think the new rules will negatively impact him as far as his defensive work at second base. And maybe the Cardinals should have thought about that, knowing that the commissioner and his lieutenants have been obsessed about eliminating the shift, and it was just a matter of time. So the Cardinals should have put, although they would have a surplus of outfielders now anyway, they should have actually relocated Gorman to the outfield, corner outfield, but they're smarter than all of us, so I guess they know what they're doing. So anyway, what do you think?
A couple things. One, and I'm not taking shots at anybody, but it's like I'm amazed how many people are just willing to just move Gorman. Like, just he needs. We can use him as trade. I think he's still got a pretty good upside. I'm not, and I know you got to give up something, but I don't necessarily know. Like you said, that left-handed power bat, I'm not really ready to just push that off to the side. Another thought on Gorman is, I know he was a third baseman in the minors, but I never got the sense that he was a great third baseman in the minors either. So that that's the other side of it. Well, he can play third. Well, he did. Doesn't mean can he play it at the major league level. He may end up being a left-handed DH, and if he's got power, I'm good with that. It does make for an interesting scenario. I do agree with this, and I've often felt this way with the shift becoming prominent like it has been in recent years. The value of a really good defensive second baseman, I thought, was not that big a deal because you were always playing 3 guys on that side of the infield anyway against a left-hander. So I do understand the point there that he's going to probably get exposed a little bit more with his range. I think you're going to see that with a lot of second basemen, though, because I just, when I go back to when Colton Wong was let go, and one of the things is, oh, you lost a Gold Glove, and I thought, yeah, but if you're playing three guys on that side of the infield most days, it's not as big a deal as back in the days without the shift, and now we're going to be without the shift. So I think that does play a part in the conversation. Obviously, catcher, yes, I'm all in on trying to get Murphy out of Oakland and bring him into St. Louis. I just don't know that I would go Gorman's way, but the other thing, and you mentioned this, and I really don't know what the A's value in terms of a young player. Do they really want a guy who has been here for a year? Do they want somebody who's not been there at all so they don't have to burn any kind of service time? They're just a fickle organization, and I'm not sure what their value on, what they're really looking for in terms of just that having control of a player.
Well, when Billy Beane was absolutely, everyone knew he was in charge and he was structuring the deals. His lieutenant, David Forrest, was very key in all this. But, Billy Beane was going to make the call, and he was going to set the terms for a trade. Mm-hmm. And Forrest would work on some of the details and the back and forth with the other team. But Billy Beane, in effect was kicked upstairs. He's got one of those nebulous titles now, and David Forrest is really definitely running the show. So that adds even more uncertainty exactly what Forrest would be looking for compared to maybe what Billy Beane would be looking for. Now, Billy Beane's modus operandi was they preferred volume. They weren't going to ask for your top prospect. They were not going to maybe even ask for your second prospect. They wanted multiple prospects, and they were willing to go down the ladder a little bit because they have their own set of likes and dislikes when it comes to evaluating young players. So someone that the Cardinals or the Detroit Tigers or the Washington Nationals may rate as like their 8th or 9th best prospect, the A's may have an entirely different grade on them. I mean, they're different that way.
Yeah.
So their whole thing was always to get multiple prospects. They'll leave you be with your number one, your number two. They're not interested in the razzle-dazzle part. But if they identify, they'd rather have 3 or 4 really intriguing prospects that fit what they're looking for. Great plate discipline, strike zone judgment. They love young pitchers that they want to cultivate. So it would really be it may not be the traditional type of trade, like where it involves a huge name prospect. But that's all I got because, you pointed it out. We don't know what they want. I know this. I know a few things, actually. No matter how you want to chop this up, in 2019, Murphy made his debut in the majors and did not play much because they brought him up toward the latter part of the season. And then, of course, 20 was the pandemic season. It was shortened. The schedule was shortened. Okay, so he's been their primary catcher the last 2 years. But no matter how you want to chop this up, because I chopped it up every way, since he came to the big leagues, if you just look at all the catchers in the majors that have had qualified number of games, from the time he broke into the big leagues until now, he's number 3 in the majors among catchers in wins above replacement. He's a top 3 catcher because it's offense, defense, base running. And he's got good metrics in terms of his throwing. His pitch framing's solid. It's not great, but it's solid. He's very good at blocking pitches, preventing wild pitches, preventing pass balls. His pitch framing, I think I just mentioned that. It's decent. It's solid. A little disappointing last year, but again, nothing that I'm concerned about. And he throws really well. So if you look at him, since the start of 2019 season, he's the 3rd best catcher overall in baseball. And then if you just want to say, well, let's just go to the more recent times. Well, this past season, he was second to JT Realmuto in terms of wins above replacement until the Orioles brought up their phenom prospect. That kid is great, by the way. My goodness. Cody Rushman.
Oh, yeah.
He is great. So Cody Rushman actually accumulated more WAR after he got up than Murphy did. So Murphy was second or third, no matter how you want to compute it. But if you go the last 2 seasons, Murphy's the number 3 catcher in baseball, again, overall play, overall value, according to wins above replacement. So when you're talking about the 3rd best overall catcher in baseball, and not just for 1 year, not just for 2 years, but since he came to the bigs in 2009, the 3rd best catcher in baseball, who's only 28, and then you have 3 years of contract control. I mean, it ain't easy to find those guys.
I mean, very true.
It's not. The thing that irritates the hell out of me is, you got media people and you got too many fans, in my opinion, who are like, oh, I don't want to give up all. Well, first of all, you don't know what you have to give up. And second of all, do you know how damn hard it is to find a guy that is the 3rd most overall value at the catching position since 2019? He's still young, and he's under reasonable, I mean really reasonable contract control for 3 seasons. Yeah, you got to give up something.
Yes, you do.
I'm just like, I went off on a rant on this last week, but it's like, even people that I respect in the business, you see them answering questions or whatever, and it's just like, he costs a lot of money. Oh, you have to give up so much. Yeah. That's how you get better if you're going to go on the outside. You can't avoid, if you really want to upgrade and you really want to bring in top shelf talent, you're going to have to spend a hell of a lot of money, or you're going to have to give up prospects. What are you afraid of? That's the problem with the Cardinals. They did great with Arenado, and they did great with Goldschmidt. Tremendous trades, but that's because the other 2 teams gave those guys away. It didn't hurt the Cardinals at all to actually trade the prospects that they traded. Ozuna's a different story, but that's so far in the past now. But what have the Cardinals done? And I grant you that, getting Goldschmidt and Arenado is phenomenal. But that's even more of a reason why you have to build around them, and you have to put more elite talent around them. And you have a chance for the first time since the 1999 pre-2000 offseason to go get a starting catcher. And your catching has been the worst in the big leagues the last 2 years, offensively, defensively, and base running. 30th and last in wins above replacement. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't be really aggressive about upgrading that position in a way that you will plug in a guy that will be just as good as Molina has been the last year or so, last couple years, and a guy who will greatly improve your offense at the position. So why wouldn't you feel that that's worth the investment in a trade? And a guy who's, again, going to play 3 years at a really team-friendly salary. Why? Everyone needs to shut up about Tyler Barnhart. Everyone have had Jacob Stallings available. He's a scrapper. That one. It just can the team go out and try to get a top shelf catcher when he's available? How often are those guys available? I don't know.
You got to be aggressive.
That's my rant for the day.
No, you got to be aggressive in this situation. It is too important of a position, whether you want to talk about defensively, how you deals with the pitching staff, whatever, to not go out and try and get the best guy you can because you just lost a Hall of Famer. You don't want to go and just go, well, we're just going to get a placeholder, a guy just kind of fill the spot. Maybe our guy down below, Herrera, will develop, but for now, you can't do that. You got to be aggressive. Yeah. And back to the point, you'd mentioned the 2 guys they acquired in trades, Arenado and Goldschmidt. Take advantage of their good years they got left. Be aggressive here. You have resources with which to make it happen. And like I said, the one thing is, I just don't know what the A's value, because we did the segment right as we were closing the show last night on scouts talking about what they saw in the Arizona Fall League. There was one guy you said, well, Mason Wood, maybe he should just be a pitcher. So maybe that guy was from Oakland. You don't know, but you just never know how other guys see guys.
if I were, I'm not really making predictions, but if the way I'm just like, you look at the Cardinals and you look at their reluctance to spend, big money, top shelf money. And number two, you also look at the Cardinals and the last time they didn't have a slam, like in other words, the Colorado and the Arizona trades were slam dunks. You could have pulled someone off the street to make that trade. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that's a little unfair because they had to also sweet talk. Bill DeWitt did this part. Yeah. Sweet talk the Rockies into actually paying a big chunk of Arenado's contract, right?
Yes.
It's just one of the dumbest trades in the history of mankind. But anyway, so those were no-brainer trades, though. There was no anxiety or sweat or worry about any of that with Goldie and Arenado. I mean, that those things fell into your lap. Again, metaphorically speaking, you could just grab a guy off a bus, coming off and walking on the bus stop and say, "Hey, here's a number for the Diamondbacks. Why don't you complete this Goldschmidt deal?" Oh, okay. Mo, however, is still haunted and tormented, very much so, by what happened with the Marcell Ozuna trade. So that's why there are people in the industry, and I've talked to a couple of them, that say he's really nervous about anything that would require them to give up, let's say, the 2023 version of a Sandy Alcantara,
Yeah, well, I get that.
He's very, very nervous about this. I've said this before, and I couldn't be more sincere about it. The Cardinals, especially after the Ozuna trade, their thing is like, we have to absolutely win the trade. We don't care about it being a good trade for both teams. We have to destroy the other side. They were able to do it because the owner of the Rockies is an utter and complete fool. And the Diamondbacks people, I think, are pretty smart, but I think that they thought they were getting people who they thought were going to be a lot better than they are. And you know what? In their defense, I think Carson Kelly's a hell of a talent, but injuries have really slowed him down. And same with Luke Weaver, who's now not even with them anymore. They got burned not because they were dumb, but they just the young guns that they got back just never panned out quite the way they wanted, especially Kelly, who's still solid, don't get me wrong. But Mo's not going to let's make that trade. You know what? We got to give up something. It'll help Oakland, but, it's really going to help us, so let's do it. No, we must own the other team. We must annihilate them. He doesn't want the criticism of a trade gone bad because he's gotten a lot of it in retrospect about the Ozuna deal where they gave up two pitchers who became great. Not just Alcantara, but Zach Gallen as well.